everyone. Welcome to Global Voices. I'm so glad to have you here. Today, you are here. You are here for Dr. Brian Fikkert, and of course, you know that. But we have a couple more Global Voices coming up this semester. We have one tomorrow. It's still not too late to sign up for Daniel Salinas. He will be talking about global theological education. He is a professor in a seminary in Columbia. He does live stateside, travels there quite a bit. He's with Mesa Scholars, which is part of Mesa Global, an organization that's with us this week for Go Global. By the way, if you're a student and you haven't had a chance to go by and see the mission agencies out there, please go. Please check them out. Try to connect with one or two of them. Find out what they do. And we just love for you to learn about what God's doing around the world. So if you do want to join us tomorrow, you have a couple hours to sign up for this. Please use the QR code for that. And later in October, we will have Renee Pitts. She is with another agency that will do it. Yeah, thank you. Woo, Renee. She's an old friend of mine, actually. She used to work on this campus. Now she's with Greater Europe Mission, and she's going to be talking research that's come out of the UK showing a dramatic increase in church attendance among Gen Z. And so it's always good to have some encouraging good news. So please come and check that out. We'd love to have you. Today it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Brian Fikkert. You already know who he is, which is why you're here. He's the author of When Helping Hurts. He has a relatively new book called Becoming Whole, which he'll be sharing about today. I've been privileged in the last 24 hours or so to get to know him a bit, to hear him speak a couple of times, to hear a fascinating conversation between him and some of the business professors on campus. He's a godly man. He is very knowledgeable about his field. He's been very warm. He's been fun to be around, very personable, and I've just enjoyed having him here. So please welcome Dr. Brian Fikkert.
Thank you, brother. So this is rather intimidating, isn't it? So I asked for a chair. I thought it might be a little overwhelming for you. Yeah, it is. So I'm Brian, and it's a joy to be with you folks. I didn't really know what to expect in 2 days here. It's been remarkable. I'm so encouraged by the young people I've met here, by the faculty. There's just a lot of great things going on here. We have a problem because I have about 2 hours worth of material, and we don't have 2 hours. So what we're going to do here, you all have an exercise on your seat. Please take that out. The exercise is completely unfair, and I'm going to make it even more unfair because we're going to do it in 3 minutes. All right, so here's the setup. Just listen. I'm going to summarize it all for you really quickly. It's not fair, but just, submit to this. So the setup is this. You're a donor, and you want to give money away to Christian organizations. You have $100,000 that you have to give away right now. You have to. You can't choose not to. I see some tight Dutch people here, and you're all going to hold on to your wallets. You have to give, all right? $100,000 right away. You can give it in any way you want amongst these three organizations. You can give $100,000 to one of them, or you can divide it up any way you want to, but you have to give away $100,000. Is it clear? Okay, here's your options. All three organizations work in the majority world of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and you know all three organizations well. So there's no, I'm an economist. We do this thing all else equal. So right now, everything's equal about the three organizations except for these little grants, okay? So the first one is this. There's an organization called MIC.org, Microenterprise.org, and they're providing small business training to groups of poor people. They have been experimenting with delivering the same content by cell phones instead of in group meetings. They've discovered that the training, the content, can be communicated by cell phone in a way that is equally understandable to the live group meetings. But it saves a bucket load of money if you do it by cell phones, right? People don't have to come to meetings. The staff don't have to meet with people. Just beam the information out by cell phone, right? And they're asking for money to expand this program. That's the first option. The second option, HealthOrg, is an organization that's providing medical services. The staff believe that demonic forces are affecting the patients and actually impacting the organization itself. And they ask for money to hire a director of spiritual integration who will train the staff in how to combat spiritual forces in this health ministry. That's the second one. Okay. The third one provides jobs preparedness training to urban slum dwellers. So it's training in interview skills and work ethic and how to write a resume and all kinds of things that you need to be able to work in a business. They're providing biblically based worldview training in these messages of how to be prepared as a worker. They have the opportunity to receive a large grant from the U.S. government. Because the money is coming from the U.S. government, they have to separate spiritual topics from technical topics. So what they're going to do is provide jobs preparedness training that's not religious in nature. And then separate from that, by time and place, they're going to do Bible studies on how one can become saved. And the government will pay for the technical training, and they're asking you as a donor to pay for the training on how to become saved. Is it clear? You have to allocate your funds across those three, and you have 15 seconds to do it. Okay, I'll give you 30. Go fast. You already got it. What? Don't share the answers with anybody. Okay, your time is up. You've just spent $100,000. All right. Normally I would give people more time, but we're a little constrained on time here. So I'm a professor of economics and community development at Covenant College, Lookout Mountain, Georgia, overlooking the city of Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's about 2 hours from here. And I'm also the founder of something called the Chalmers Center. What we try to do is equip churches and Christian ministries to work amongst people who are poor in more effective ways. And, I like to tell you that we had everything figured out on day one. We didn't, and we still don't. But in God's grace, we've been able to put some of the ideas that people have taught us and that we've learned through the School of Hard Knocks into a book called When Helping Hurts that God has used in a much larger way than we ever anticipated. But we found that people are still asking some questions. And so we decided to go deeper. And so I teamed up with a Trinitarian theologian named Kelly Kapic. And we co-authored the book Becoming Whole, Why the Opposite of Poverty Isn't the American Dream, and the associated field guide. Becoming Whole is way better book than When Helping Hurts. Way better. Please buy it. Please. Nobody else is. So what I'm going to be doing today, it came out, okay, I'm a Presbyterian. I don't believe in luck. But if I did, I would say there's a lot of luck in publishing. Timing is everything. Becoming Whole came out just when COVID hit. Nobody's doing anything. So anyway, maybe we should I don't know it. Anyway, so this talk is kind of a summary of the core ideas of Becoming Whole on speed dial. All right? So here we go. Again, I'm about trying to help the poor. Some of you are going, I don't care about poor people. Well, in addition to the fact that you need to repent of that problem, there are some there's some core ideas here that I think could be relevant to you regardless of what you're doing. So just hang with me, all right? Poverty alleviation, trying to help the poor. Poverty alleviation is about promoting positive change. What you're trying to do is take an individual or a community that is economically disadvantaged, and you're trying to move them to a better place, right? And so it's fundamentally about positive change, which raises the question, how do people and how do individuals and communities actually change? What does the change process look like? Well, clearly there's a supernatural thing going on. but I can't keep all the balls in the air at the same time. And so what I'm going to do first is just talk about a simple model of individual and cultural change that is, if you've studied virtue ethics, this is just virtue ethics. It goes all the way back to Aristotle, all right? So here's what it looks like. Communities are shaped by stories, all right? And there's a particular, philosophers would call it a meta-narrative. I often speak to very popular audiences, and the word meta-narrative is as scary as I am. It's a huge word. And so I'm going to call it something simpler, a story of change. A story of change, you could call it a theory of change, answers two questions. What is the goal of life, and how can the goal be achieved? What's the goal, and how can it be achieved? And it turns out that there's strong reason to believe that stories like these kinds of stories actually change individuals and communities over time. It seems like if you're in the space of missions, this could become very natural to you. It must be part of your training in missions. So real quick, this is what it looks like. So the big blue oval is a community of some sort. You could think of it as the community in which you were raised. And communities are shaped by stories of change, stories about what the goal of life is and how the goal can be achieved. The members of the community engage in practices. They actually do things to live into that story, to try to achieve the goals of the community according to the means that is part of the theory of change. Now, these practices, I'm going to give you an example in a minute. So just, what is he talking about? Just hold on, I'm going to give you an example. So the idea here is the practices are formative. As you do them, as you do practices shaped by the story, it actually changes who you are. So this is how change happens. Stories that are practiced, be doers of the word, not hearers only. Yeah, you've got a story, and Jesus tells us, go practice it. And that's how transformation happens. We hear a story, we live into that story. Now, what happens over time is the practices and the stories get embedded in systems. You can think of a system as the formal institutions in a community, like a bank or a school, but it could also be informal institutions, such as just the culture, the cultural norms in the community. And the idea is that the systems reinforce the story and the practices and perpetuate the story and practices across time. So what happens is people who are in that community, the individuals over here, as they're hearing the story, as they're living the story, as the story is being reinforced by the systems that they're in, it changes them. They become the kind of creatures that help the community to live into its story. That's how change happens. Now, again, there's supernatural things, but that's a natural. So here's an example. Basketball, clearly a favorite. So think of the basketball team as a community. Well, what's the story of change in basketball? What's the goal? Win the game. How? By scoring the most points. It's really intimidating having Tim Tennant sitting right there. look at me. But I'm not insecure at all. Now, this is being videotaped for something. I don't really know what. This is horrifying. All right, here we go. So think of a basketball team as a community. What's the story in basketball? Win the game by scoring the most points. Well, what are the practices? Well, literally, it's practicing. You practice dribbling, you practice passing, you practice shooting. You practice the game. And the coach creates a system that reinforces and perpetuates the story. What's your name? Isaiah here is a rock star basketball player. The coach praises Isaiah. Says, everybody should be like Isaiah. Isaiah gets the most playing time. Isaiah gets the most valuable player trophy at the end of the year. Everybody, the coach is saying, be like Isaiah. I'm so sorry, what's your name? Rex. Rex isn't quite as good a player as Isaiah. Rex is kind of, in this system, kind of shamed a little bit. Rex is put at the end of the bench. When Isaiah comes out of the game, the coach says to Rex, would you please go get some water for Isaiah? Isaiah gets the coach's award at the end of the year. You never want the coach's award. The coach's award is what they give to the person that they just want to make feel better because they stink. Now, what do you think Rex is going to do? In this story, this system, what's he going to do? He's going to practice his brains out. He's going to go home at night, practice dribbling, practice shooting. His mother's going to say, "Would you come in? It's time to brush your teeth and go to bed." And Rex is going to go, "I just need 5 more minutes, Mom." He's going to keep him practicing. He's going to keep on because he doesn't want to be the water boy anymore for Isaiah, right? So what's going to happen to the members of the team, the members of the community over time, as they engage in practices within the system and those stories, they change. They become different kinds of creatures. They become better basketball players. Are we together? That's what it looks like. Now, here's another piece you got to get. We get changed in ways that we are often unconscious of. It becomes part of our DNA, so to speak. That's not a technical thing, but it becomes part of our nerve endings, let's say. And so we automatically and unconsciously do the right things according to the story of change of our community. Here's what it looks like. There's 2 seconds left in the basketball game, down by a point. We pass the ball to Isaiah. Now, what does Isaiah do? Does he stop and pray, "Lord, show me what to do now"? Does he consult a handbook on how to play basketball? Does he talk to his coaches and say, "Now, what do I do when there's 1 second left in the game and I'm 10 feet from the basket"? No, his body automatically drives to the basket, jams the ball home, and they win the game. He's become the kind of creature that lives into the story unconsciously and automatically. Are we together? Okay. Now, here's the thing. We tend to default to the stories that we have absorbed unconsciously and automatically. So when I throw Isaiah the ball, was Isaiah? Isaac. Isaiah. When I throw him the ball, he unconsciously automatically does something. When we work amongst poor people, we unconsciously and automatically do things. Instead of throwing you the ball, I threw you $100,000. And I said, "Help poor people." And the way that you allocated your money is reflective of the theory of change that you have absorbed. What if our theory of change is wrong? What if we've been enculturated into the wrong story? Then we end up imposing on people who are poor the false story that we've absorbed. We together? I'm painting with outrageously broad, let me show you this right now. I've done this exercise many, many times. Usually people have more time than this. This is the results from a group of major Christian donors. They really had 100,000. In fact, they had hundreds of thousands. And this is the response. This is how they allocated their money on average. There was a lot of variation in the group, but on average, that was the allocation for the participants in this exercise. I've done with multiple groups of donors. This is what happens every time. Every time. Almost exactly the same numbers. Well, what if that's wrong? You don't like that one, do you? Why not? Because you're just thinking about fairness. You just love people. So her theory of change is love. Right, here we go. Now, I'm painting with outrageously broad strokes right now, but I would submit to you that there's 2 stories of change that dominate the space of poverty alleviation. And the reason that they dominate the space of poverty alleviation is they tend to dominate the lives of the people who are working amongst the poor. And so those who are working amongst the poor tend to default to the stories that they have been living into for most of their lives. And then they impose those stories on people who are poor in the way that the ministries are designed, implemented, and evaluated. We together? So outrageously broad strokes. Here we go. The first one, in our book, Becoming Whole, we call it, have I mentioned Becoming Whole that you should all buy that book, just in case? We call it, in Becoming Whole, it's Western naturalism, but for popular audience, I just say it's the American dream, okay? And the story in Western naturalism, the American dream, is the human being is fundamentally a physical creature. We are bodies. And we are self-centered, we are self-interested, we're self-serving. In my field of economics, this is the god of the field. We call this creature Homo economicus. And it, really sexy, right? Sorry, this is being videotaped, really great. Now, I wish I had more time to unpack this. The discipline of economics claims to be value-free. So we lull students to sleep by saying this is just neutral. Everybody agrees, whether you're a Muslim, a Hindu, atheist, or Jew, everybody agrees on certain basic truths. Well, there are assumptions that guide the field, and I don't actually agree with the assumptions. But one of the assumptions is that every human being is this creature, a highly materialistic, self-centered, consuming robot. And the entire discipline of economics, which is the foundation for business, is centered on the worship of this creature. So there's a funny thing going on. Value-free, 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 bow down and worship Homo economicus. But we never admit the second part. So young people are lured in my view, into a field that they think is value neutral, when what's really going on is they're being enculturated in a story and practices and systems that are designed to make this creature flourish. There's all kinds of evidence that students who are exposed to even just basic principles of economics become more like this creature, more self-centered, more individualistic, and more materialistic. If you're living into a story, it changes you. We together? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that one. Does he dress nice? He would, yes, if he likes nice clothes. But if he doesn't like nice clothes, he won't. It's just all up to what he or she likes, okay? Here we go. I believe that many approaches to poverty alleviation reflect that story that we have absorbed from the surrounding culture. Very broadly speaking, the goal in many poverty alleviation programs is greater consumption. In fact, if you ask an economist, how do you measure whether or not poor people's lives are improving, they will say measure consumption in the household. That's the measure. The goal is consumption. Why? Because we're material creatures. Material creatures like Homo economicus get happier through more consumption. When we deal with poor people, there's a strong tendency towards this framework. And so there's two ways we do it. One is handouts. We see a homeless person stay in the street corner, we roll down the window, give them $1. You give people money so they can buy stuff because stuff makes people happy in this story. Well, we get tired of that, right? So what we do is we pursue another strategy, which is more sophisticated, and in many ways better, and it's the story of economic empowerment. We basically say, let's help poor people get jobs, or let's help them start businesses so that they can earn more money so they can buy more stuff. And some of you are going, well, isn't that a good thing? Well, just hang on with me, all right? It's not the worst thing. But it's a story that says, join the mainstream of Western capitalism. Now, some of you are getting nervous already, I can tell. Look, I was voting Republican before most of you were born. So just relax, all right? Now, what's wrong with economic empowerment? Well, look at this. The story in Western capitalism is what? More consumption through economic growth. That's the story. What are the practices? Go to Samford, get a strong education. Work hard. Why? So you can earn more money, so you can consume more. The goal is always more consumption. We've created systems for growth and consumption. The global economic system, the national economic system, the whole thing, multinational corporations, business, the whole economic system is set up for more growth to enable more consumption. That's the story. Well, what do you think happens when you live into a story that says it's about more stuff, it's all about you, more stuff? You engage in the practices of that. You're in a system that reinforces that. I believe we're being transformed into Homo economicus. And there's plenty of evidence to suggest that as capitalism expands, and as you're exposed to capitalism, You become more self-interested, more individualistic, more materialistic. You actually become more like Homo economicus. Well, that's not bad if Homo economicus is good for human flourishing, but I don't think it is. This is anxiety and depression amongst college-age young people in America from the 1930s to the present. Now, if you've read recent research, you're reading things like, the iPhone is the cause, that it's our cell phones, and we're driving ourselves crazy with our cell phones, and that's true. They should be cast into the outer darkness. The problem is that the story goes back at least to the 1930s. Now, what's going on from 1938 to the data here through 2007? What's going on during that time period? Tremendous economic growth in America. Unparalleled accumulations of incomes and wealth. If the story of the American dream is true, we should be flourishing like crazy because we've got more income so we can buy more stuff and shalom can bust out for Homo economicus. But that's not what's happening. There's increasing evidence to suggest that it's actually our pursuit of the American dream, our pursuit of a highly individualistic, highly materialistic way of being in the world is what's driving this. Guys, we're not made, for me, this data says not made for this kind of story. Now, you can kind of force yourself into it, but it doesn't work. So, when I get on the airplane, all my sanctification is at risk. Because there's somebody 4'2" sitting in the first row. Their feet dangle. They can't even reach the floor. And I kind of, I cough and I kind of nudge them and kind of hint. Never works. So I walk back to economy class. And I stand there and I can't fit in the seat. And the stewardess comes by and says, get in the seat, right? I'm like, I can't do it. She's get in the seat. So I shove myself in the seat, and my knees are up my nose, and I got a headache, and the person in front of me invariably believes that they own the seat in full recline. And so there's this game where I'm pushing back with my knees, and there. So can I fit in the seat? Well, sort of, but it sure isn't working for me. I'm very uncomfortable. By the time we land, they have to get me out with a crowbar. That's what this is saying. You can kind of function in a capitalist society. You can kind of function in the stories, systems, and practices of Homo economicus, but it doesn't really fit you that well. And after a while, our personhood starts screaming out and going, I'm not made for this. Now, the thing here is we're imposing this story on poor people. This is a book called Happiness. It's written by an economist, actually, surprisingly. It's called Happiness Around the World, The Paradox of Happy Peasants and Miserable Millionaires. There's a strange thing happening around the world, that as the rest of the world's adopting the story and the systems and practices of Western capitalism, they're experiencing rapid economic growth. India, China. As that rapid economic growth is happening, as people are becoming economically empowered, material poverty is plummeting. It's happening all over the world. There's a slide I must have deleted. It turns out that from 1990 to the year 2015, a 25-year period, the percentage of people living below the World Bank poverty line of $1.90 per day was reduced by more than 50%. The percentage of people living in extreme poverty was reduced by more than 50% in 25 years. That's one of the greatest achievements in all of human history. It's unbelievable. How did it happen? Economic growth. As places like India and China adopted the stories and systems and practices of Western civilization, Shazam happens. It works. It's the greatest story ever for producing things. It's remarkable. It's unparalleled. If you want to produce stuff and generate income and wealth, the story and systems and practices we have are terrific. The problem is that human flourishing doesn't come from just more stuff. And so what we're seeing around the world is that as countries are adopting the stories and systems practice of Western capitalism, as they are growing, as material poverty is being reduced, there's actually increasing dissatisfaction, and there is rising anxiety and depression in the very places that are growing. And so we're exporting our story with both its benefits and its pathologies. Are we together? All right, you're all acting really sophisticated, like, yeah, I knew that one. Okay, now we're going to get a little closer to home. My primary spiritual gift is offensiveness, by the way. Some people got love, joy, peace. I got offensiveness. So here we go. In our book, we call this the story of evangelical Gnosticism. So the Divinity students should know what Gnosticism is, right? So in ancient heresy, it says the spirit is good and the body is bad. And I am one of a number of people who believe that the Western civilization has essentially syncretized the gospel with a Gnostic kind of story. And so it's evangelical Gnosticism. For other audiences, I just say it's the baptized American dream. Here's what it looks like. The nature of humanity in the baptized American dream is that human beings are bodies that contain souls, but they contain souls in the same way that a cup or a bottle contains water. And so the soul and the body touch, but they're not integrated. And so you can sort of pour the soul out, so to speak, right? The body and the soul are separable. Now, of course, we believe there is some separation there, that at death, the body and the soul are separated. Now, we've tended to reduce the soul to the mind. This is why Presbyterians have such long sermons, because we think if we can just get the mind, I'm a Presbyterian, if you can get the mind fixed with all the right doctrine, Shazam will happen. And what Shazam? Shazam is getting the soul to heaven for all eternity. In a lot of Western evangelicalism, the goal is get the soul to heaven for all eternity, where it will float around on clouds, wearing diapers, and playing a harp. Now, admit it, you don't even really want to go there. You don't. Now, it's better than the alternative place, but this isn't that attractive of a story. I mean, I don't want to be a ghost. I want to have a body, a shorter one, and I want to eat Thai food. Oh, my word. So I grew up a pastor's kid, and I had to sing in the junior choir. And my sister was the choir director. There's no fate worse than death. And I thought for all eternity I was going to be in the junior choir with my sister as the choir director. And I thought, my word, this is good news? Get the soul to heaven for all eternity. We don't really have a story for the body. We don't really have a story for Monday through Saturday. So what we do is we revert to the only story we know. Automatically and unconsciously, we revert to the story of the American dream. I think many American Christians are basically living a baptized American dream. Get your soul to heaven for all eternity. I'm a Presbyterian, eternal security. I'm all locked in, baby. Now what do? I have no story for the body. I've got no story for Monday through Saturday, so I default to the only story I know, the story of the American dream. Work hard, get an education, increase my income, live your best life now. I think a lot of our poverty alleviation approaches default to this story. So what we do is we want to get the soul to heaven. That's the primary goal, so we do evangelism. And then we don't have a story for the body, so we just kind of revert to the only story we know, the story of the American dream. And so we basically say, all right, let's help poor people to either through handouts or through economic empowerment. Let's basically do what the world does and tack a tract on. We together? And what happens if you live like the world Monday through Saturday? You need to triple the mental health services at Samford University. We have the same problem at Covenant. We're living the wrong story. And then we unconsciously and automatically impose that story on poor people. If you look at the third grant proposal, it's pure baptized American dream. And donors love it. And some of you loved it too, but we're not going to have confession time. If you look at that grant proposal again, we had a biblical worldview about work, and what we did is we said, the skills for the workplace are identical for believers and unbelievers. We're just going to do technical training on work, and then over here we're going to explain how to get your soul to heaven through salvation. It's pure baptized American dream stuff. Are we together? A lot of Christian relief and development work looks this way. We need God's story. We've got 10 minutes left. Here we go. all right? God's story. You all know this, but some of you, perhaps maybe it'll come out a little different from what you've heard before. I don't know. So let's talk, starting with God's story about creation, right? What's a human being? Well, lots of theological work. I'm here at Divinity School. This is terrifying to talk to Divinity students who know everything. All right? There's a lot of theological work being done on what is a human being. Some people think it is the premier issue facing the church in the coming century. What is a human being? And so theologians, I think, have characterized things in this way that I find helpful. The human being is a body that contains a soul, but the soul is not just the mind. It includes the affections and the will. Our emotions matter. I was raised in a household, Presbyterian father, mother's side of the family, Salvation Army officers, all the way back to the founding of the Salvation Army. And then Dutch Calvinism. It's just a mess. I would say the implicit message in I'm so thankful for my upbringing. You have no idea. I am so thankful. When we were co-authoring Becoming Whole, I was struggling with what is a biblical anthropology. My co-author, Kelly Kapic, knows everything. He's a Trinitarian theologian. And as we're talking, he just says offhandedly, Brian, a lot of us treat the affections like they're part of the fall. And as soon as he said it, I thought, it's me. Because in the household I was raised, it was basically be on mission. Do global missions. Hurl yourselves on the beaches of Normandy, have all your limbs blown off, and get up. And the fact that you don't feel good about it, you shove that down. Because emotions get in the way of mission. So I've learned to suppress emotions like crazy. It's not working very well. As soon as my co-author said, I thought, oh my word, this is me. I went to my wife and I said, have you experienced this from me? She's like, 30 years of marriage, honey. I went to my kids and I said, they said, yes, Dad. They said, you loved us and you cared for us. And you wanted to hear about our feelings, but not that long. And they were supposed to be put on the side pretty quickly to get on mission. It's not a godly way of being. Head, heart, hands, the will, the desire to act, right? It's interesting, different theological traditions emphasize different aspects of the soul. Presbyterians is all about the mind. Affections, who's that? Pentecostals, how do you feel? You want to get something done, find a good Methodist. I said that for Timothy Tennant up there. Now here's the thing. The body and the soul are highly integrated. It's not just that the body contains the soul, it's that they're actually highly integrated. So what happens to us physically affects us spiritually. What happens to us spiritually affects us physically. We're highly integrated creatures, right? This matters for how you work with poor people. When the woman walks into your church asking for help with her electric bill, we have to know how she's wired in order to help her well. There's another feature here that I've got to get to. God is inherently a relational being, right? From all eternity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost exist in deep community with one another. And as beings made in his image, we are hardwired for relationship as well. Theologians have historically summarized this as relationships with God, self, others, and creation. Now, I like pictures, so here's my picture. The human being is a tire. The outer edge of you is not the outer edge of the hub in the middle. The outer edge of you, no illustration's perfect, just relax. I'm a bunch of uptight people. The outer edge of you is the outer edge of the tire. You're not just a body, not just body contains a soul. You're a highly integrated mind, affections, will, body, relational thingy. So what happens to relationally affects you physically and spiritually. This is the hardest thing for Americans to understand because we're so individualistic. Relationship with others. Why was COVID so bad? If we're homo economicus, or if we're baptized homo economicus, COVID's not a problem unless you get it. It shouldn't have been a problem. I stayed home, I worked hard, I earned my money, and I did church online. Body, soul, Shazam. But that's not what happened, is it? This spoke in the tire was removed. We were all isolated. And what happens to a tire when it goes down the road with that missing spoke, it all turns in on itself. All the relationships become distorted, and our bodies and our souls become distorted. That's what happened. The Surgeon General has determined that loneliness, which is an epidemic proportions right now, has the same impacts on life expectancy as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. We are body, soul, relational creatures, and that anthropology changes everything. We together? Human flourishing in this anthropology is to enjoy these relationships in the way that God designed them to be experienced. It's not primarily about consumption. It's not primarily about consumption plus getting my soul to heaven. It's about enjoying relationships with God, self, others, and the rest of creation in the way that God designed those relationships to work. If I were in a room right now of secular social psychologists, unbelievers, they would all look at this and say, yeah, we know all, we affirm all of this. They would say it's not really God, it's your belief in a higher power. Jonathan Haidt, some of you know Jonathan Haidt, he affirms this. The Oxford Handbook of Happiness, it sits in my desk, it's this thick. Summarizes all the research on happiness around the world. You know what they're finding? Happiness comes from deep relationships with God, self, others, and creation. Everybody in social psychology knows this. I have a very hard time convincing American Christians of this. All right, 5 minutes, here we go. What God does in God's story is he places human beings in the only habitat in which we can actually flourish. He puts us in the Garden of Eden. Now, some of you might have been studying the Garden of Eden. Some of you might know some of the research from Greg Beal and others that says that the Garden of Eden was actually a temple. A temple is a place where God and humanity meet and dwell together. That's really important because we're hardwired for a relationship with God. And in the garden temple, human beings dwelt with God. Greg Beal, Reformed Theological Seminary in Dallas, argues, he's not the only one, but he's one of them, argues that the temple or the tabernacle, either one, were actually constructed in such a way to reflect this reality. So that there's the outer courtyard, right? That's where the Dutch people could be. And then there's the what's the thing? The holy place, right? And there's the most holy place. So God is everywhere, but he's chosen to reveal himself most intensely, to relate most fully in certain locations. The Holy of Holies. Greg Beal argues that the Garden of Eden was actually like the Holy of Holies. It was the place where God's presence was most keenly felt. Human beings are hardwired for relationship with God. We're hardwired to dwell in God's presence. Dignity. Adam and Eve had dignity and worth as image bearers of God Almighty, right? Relationship with self, relationship with others, deep communion with Adam and Eve. And then this last one is so crucial in the space, in my field of economic development. Because Adam and Eve had a job to do. The imagery in scriptures that Adam and Eve were priest rulers. They were to guard the garden temple. They were also to expand the garden temple through work, not as a necessary evil to get the income to buy the stuff, but as priest rulers, they were to work, to unfold and unpack the created order as an act of worship to God and service to others. In economic theory, work is bad. It's a necessary evil that you do to be able to earn the income to buy the stuff, which is good. In the biblical account, work as worship and service is inherent to who we are. We are priest rulers. We together? We unconsciously and automatically impose our story of change onto poor people. Look at the very first one. Folks, community preceded work. Adam and Eve were in communion with God, self, and others before they were told to work. The story in the garden is not pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and pursue the American dream through highly individualistic behaviors. The story of the garden is deep community that precedes work. Being precedes doing. It's true for the Trinity as well. Father, Son, and Holy Ghost existed from all eternity before they created. Being precedes doing. Look at McOrg. We blew apart community. for efficiency. Never do that. Now, you're all sophisticated, you're all Beeson, you're all about community. You probably got that one right. Donors love this one. We're defaulting to the wrong anthropology and how we are creating ministries. We okay? Know what happens in the fall? So I was taught growing up, and I mentioned this in chapel yesterday, the forensic dimensions of the fall. I've sinned against a righteous and holy God. I deserve eternal punishment. I believe all of that. But something else happens, guys. We're hardwired for communion with God. Adam and Eve are cast out of his presence. It's like having that spoke removed, and the whole thing turns in. The whole creature turns in on him or herself. What did Martin Luther call this? Say it louder. Homo incurvatus and say, the human being is turned in on him or herself. We're not wired for human flourishing. And what happens is demonic forces are given greater latitude in the created order. Grant number 2, which no Western donor likes, actually makes a lot of sense from a biblical story. Our friend in the front row got it. Redemption. What does redemption look like? Folks, the story of redemption comes down to this. Why did Jesus come to earth? He says in Luke chapter 4, verse 43, he's come to declare the good news of the kingdom of God. What is that? It's the restoration of the conditions of Eden in the new creation. The imagery of the new creation is of Eden restored, not in the form of a garden, but in the form of a city whose conditions are once again right for human flourishing. Look what it says there. Revelation 21. Now the dwelling of God is with people again, just like it was in Eden. The foundation for human flourishing is to dwell in God's presence. And look what happens when God is once again dwelling with people. We're restored to humanness. We get our old jobs back. We're not going to float around on clouds playing harps and wearing diapers. Revelation 5:10, you've made them to be a kingdom and priests and to serve our God. They will reign on the earth. We get our old jobs back. Now, that's future, right? But there's a now to the kingdom. There's a now. And the now of the kingdom is most fully present in the local church. It's most fully present in the local church. That's where God dwells in the here and now. That's where we can be restored to humanness. And you know what? As that happens, we get our old jobs back right now. You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. We are restored to what it means to be human, which includes work as worship to God and service to others. It's a different story. Folks, this is not just theory. This is what the Chalmers Center uses to design our programs and our ministries. We don't do it perfectly at all, but we're trying to create habitats in which human beings can flourish again. Habitats that anticipate poorly, inadequately, imperfectly what it will look like when the new creation is here again. We try to create ministries that help people to experience God, dignity, community, and work as worship and service. That's what we're doing. It's a joy to be with you.